On this episode, we visit Helena to learn about Bike Walk Montana. Then we talk with the director of the Metropolitan Planning Organization in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Finally, we talk with the greenways coordinator in Cheyenne. Stay tuned.
We're in Helena, Montana, talking with Melinda Barnes, who's executive director of Bike Walk Montana. What is Bike Walk Montana?
Bike Walk Montana is a statewide nonprofit. We're working to make biking and walking safer and accessible for everyone in Montana. So we're an advocacy organization. We work to pass better laws, to help state agencies pass better policies, provide education to the users of the road, whether it's drivers, pedestrians, or bicyclists.
What are some of the biggest challenges peds and bikes face in Montana?
I think our roads could be a lot safer. I think that it's very challenging to sometimes find places to walk and bike. We're a very rural state, which brings its own challenges. How do you incorporate bicycle and pedestrian facilities into projects, and how do you fund those? Funding is always a challenge. And just making that shift, because we're such a large rural state, we're also a very car-centric state, and people like their cars and they like to travel by car. So bicycling and walking sometimes is an afterthought, I think.
Now, when you get into the cities, Montana has several cities of some size. What's going on there? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of momentum, actually, and that's really for towns and cities of all sizes across Montana. We're seeing great things happening. More and more cities and towns passing complete streets policies, really top-rated complete streets policies as well. We're seeing cities and town public officials getting behind this and putting the money towards it, making it a priority, and as a result, we're seeing more and more people biking and walking. So I think we're really experiencing some good momentum here in the state.
And you're here in the capital in Helena. What can your organization do at the city level, scattered around the state, or are there local groups that you can sort of piggyback with?
Yeah, so we actually do a lot of work with communities, and sometimes that will be workshops within the community. Sometimes it's just conversations, whether we go to city council meetings, whether we work with local advocacy groups or trails groups. We can provide guidance on bicycle racks, policies that would improve biking and walking there, whether that's sidewalk policies or complete streets policies. We can do assessments, walking audits, any number of things that we can help communities with and provide guidance and resources.
Is information the most important thing that the places need to know what could be done?
I think so, and I think oftentimes people aren't familiar with what the options are, and so unless you can have that vision and really understand what's possible, then it's hard to make that change. And so part of it is certainly education and showing examples of either other places in Montana what's happening, or outside of Montana where we're really seeing some forward thinking.
So anything in particular you're working on at the moment?
We're actually planning our next Bike Walk Summit, and that's going to be in March. And so that's an opportunity where people from all over the state can come together and they learn from others. It's a great networking opportunity. We bring in one or two people from out of the state to come in and talk about some topic, where we'll have a workshop the first day, and then we have presenters, so all kinds of breakout sessions. So that's a great event. And then we're also preparing for the next legislative session in 2019, so to try to get some better laws through.
Any particular piece of legislation you're thinking about, or is it still a little early?
Well, for the last 3 sessions, we've tried to get a safe passing bill for bicyclists. So we're going to try that again. And then we're looking at maybe a funding bill, something to create some funding for bicycling and pedestrians. And then last time there were a number of bills that we just had to oppose, and so we anticipate maybe some of those coming forth again.
What's happening in the way of planning for peds and bikes, either here in Helena or on the state level?
That one's it really varies from community to community. And again, there's some communities that really understand this and really understand the benefits, whether it's health or economics or environment, of getting more people out walking and biking, and that the more we can make it accessible and the more we can make it a part of their daily lifestyles, then the more benefit it has. And so the communities that get that are really planning for that, and we're seeing more communities adopting bicycle and pedestrian plans at the local level. And then also at the state level, the State Department of Transportation is beginning the process of developing a statewide bike ped plan, which is really exciting. So I think that will provide some good direction for the state and hopefully be a real leading document that can make some changes.
Now, when a State Department works on a plan like that, is that something where you'll just be on the sidelines cheering them on, or can you actually give real input to it?
I'm hoping to be able to give real input, trying to be involved and engaged with that. Yep. So they've told me that I will be, so that's what I'm hoping for.
And if I were to come back and visit Montana, let's say a decade from now, what would you hope to be able to show me?
I'd love to show that we have a statewide complete streets policy. I'd love to show that we have better connections for bicycling and walking, that we have more people really out there embracing it, and that we see better policies at the local level across the state, and that we have some better laws. I think we can improve laws for both pedestrians and bicycles.
We're in Cheyenne, Wyoming, talking with Tom Mason, who's director of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. What does the Cheyenne Metropolitan Planning Organization do?
The Cheyenne MPO does the transportation planning work for the Cheyenne urban area. We have two local governments, that's the City of Cheyenne and Laramie County, and along with the Wyoming Department of Transportation Department, we do the transportation planning for the Cheyenne urban area.
Where do pedestrians fit into that?
The Cheyenne MPO, as all MPOs around the country, we look at all transportation modes to help make them more efficient and effective and make sure that they all work well together. So our transportation planning involves all modes, and that it includes bicycle and pedestrian planning.
And you've come out with a number of plans, which is what planning organizations do. What sort of pedestrian plan have you come out with?
Yes, our office has produced a pedestrian plan for the entire Cheyenne urban area, along with a safe routes to school plan. But we have also been greatly involved in doing other non-motorized transportation planning, including greenway and non-motorized transportation and on-street bicycle planning.
And how does the transportation side of things fit into the other planning that goes on in a metropolitan area?
Pedestrian planning fits in hand in glove with all the different transportation planning work that we do. Whether we are doing a master plan for a new big bridge or a long transportation corridor, our planning work that we've done in the past assures that those facilities have the appropriate pedestrian facilities built into it. We normally do the transportation plans for a corridor, and it addresses all the modes, the pedestrians and bicycles along with the vehicles. We have also in our master transportation planning work, which was known as Plan Cheyenne. From that big document, we then worked with the city as they developed a unified development code, which brought together the zoning, subdivision, and road standards into one document. And that one document assures that all the roads are built appropriately to their functional classification and purpose. And that includes building the appropriate transportation, the pedestrian facilities into that roadway.
And if I were to take a walk around Cheyenne, how are things for pedestrians? Do you have sidewalks most places? How are your crosswalks? What would I see?
Yes. In the original city that was platted in the 1880s, there are good pedestrian facilities. Back in the day, when the city was first formed, pedestrian walking around was one of the major ways of getting around besides the horse and buggy. So you'd find in the original city detached sidewalks and with tree-lined streets. As the city progressed into the, like 1960s and 70s, you didn't see that so much. Most of the sidewalks were more narrow, and they were also attached to the curb. But you'll see in our most recent subdivisions where we're trying to get back to the detached sidewalks, appropriate crossings, tree-lined streets, and if the developer doesn't do that, then they have to build a wider sidewalk next to the curb, which we think would be a little bit more costly. So we tried to put that incentive in that they do detached sidewalks. A lot of our new projects, they all have good sidewalk on one side and greenway path on the other, if it's part of the greenway plan to make that road corridor part of the system to handle bicycles and be a mixed-use path. So we're doing fairly well in the recent times of getting back to the old ways of making it important for pedestrians.
And you mentioned you work with the city, you work with the county, you work with the Department of Transportation. Do you spend a lot of your time just talking with those different entities who are, I guess, the ones who actually put your plans into action?
Constantly. As an MPO, we have a citizens committee that gives the layman's input on our transportation system, and the people that serve on that committee are extremely interested in making sure that the pedestrians and bicyclists are taken care of in our planning work. We have done many enhancement projects for the community that's been implemented by the city, county, and state DOT. We're really proud of those efforts. The other committee, technical committee, is made up of the engineers and planners from the city, county, and DOT, along with many other agencies that are represented in Cheyenne, including the school district, the Air Force Base, local developers, and the airport board, and many others. Anybody who has an interest in transportation, they're involved in our MPO, having a say-so on our transportation system. Then the policy committee, we only have 3 voting members on our small policy committee, the mayor, county commissioner, and the state DOT district engineer. And so along with the policy, the MPO committees, along with other committees that are either subgroups of the MPO or with the city or county, many people have many voices in the development of our transportation system.
One thing that frequently comes up is not just convenient access to get places, but do it safely. What have you done looking at transportation safety?
The Cheyenne NPO has produced a transportation safety management plan. It is actually, when we first did it, it was one of the first in the countries, especially for a small NPO. We were recognized by AMPO, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, along with the FHWA, FTA, and APA in awards for our transportation safety management plan. Since the original one, we have updated it. We update them looking at our crash records. And we have a very proactive crash reporting and collection and reporting system. We collect information from the city police, county sheriff, highway patrol, and that all goes to YDOT in their safety branch, and they in turn send that data back to us where we can do our own analysis. So with our transportation safety plan, we figure out what do we want to emphasize with the public to make better, and we figure out what we want to emphasize by the crash data. Are the crashes high with pedestrians a certain year, bicyclists that year, or are there specific intersections that need to be looked at? So that data is used for us to figure out how we want to emphasize those safety improvements and then have a big educational campaign. For instance, this last year we did two projects. One was at a two-lane roundabout that still has a little high number of crashes, even though they're not severe. But we're trying to educate the people, slow down during, going through the roundabout. The other campaign was our bicycle safety, where we had one year we kind of spiked with crashes on bikes. So we put banners downtown. We put big stickers on our buses, to watch out for the bikes. And we hope that brought awareness to the public that, it's summertime, be careful, there's kids out on bikes. So we're going to continue our work with our implementing our transportation safety management plan by every year, looking at the crash data, seeing, okay, what do we want to focus on now? And then work and develop a program with a professional marketing team to help us put that information out there. So it's a citywide effort to be safer in whatever that particular emphasis is for the year.
We're talking with Jeff Wiggins, who's the greenways coordinator. How would you describe the greenway system in Cheyenne?
I describe it as pretty robust. It's been around for about 25 years or so. We now have 41 miles of trail, so that's a 10-foot wide concrete trail, grade separated, detached from the roadway and such. And another 18 miles of shared use trails, which are either not concrete or a little bit narrower or attached to the roadway, that kind of thing. 25 underpasses, which is an incredible investment of money on behalf of the city and the citizens of the community, and 5 overpasses. So it's a pretty nice system. We've been at it, as I said, for 25 years, and we've been able to reach just about every neighborhood in the sense that we look at geographic equity, making sure that everybody is within a walkable distance of getting to the trail, and the trail itself, of course, is there to connect the parks, neighborhoods, schools, and businesses in our community. So it's done a great job over the years, and it continues to grow as our community continues to grow.
Now, it isn't necessarily cheap putting in, the grade separation, even though that's important for, the quality for the trail users. How do you pay for it?
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. Beg, buy, borrow, and steal. The majority of our funding comes through what we call the 6-penny tax. It's a little bit of a unique situation here in Cheyenne and Wyoming. We have these countywide special purpose tax elections that occur every so often, and the municipality, the county, the smaller entities within the county can decide what they'd like to focus their tax funding on. We as a community, 4 times over the last 25 years, have chosen to include the greenway in that taxing mechanism. And over that period of time, we've gotten about $14 million with which we've been able to implement a lot of those improvements that I described before. And with that, we're also able to leverage a lot of city, county, state, federal grant funding opportunities.
So people just don't say they like the trails, but they go in and vote to spend money on the trails.
Absolutely. I think there's a high degree of accountability in this system, the six-penny local option sales tax that we have. We went there once, we did the job we said we were going to do, and now each time we've come back, we've gotten an increasing amount of support, an increasing number of support, communities growing, of course, as well. But because we've been good stewards of the tax funds, people now say, please, continue this. This is an absolute asset to our community. We need more of this. Come to my front door.
If you went out on a nice sunny summer day, would we see a lot of people on the greenways?
Absolutely. Obviously, just like every community, there's areas that are more and less busy. But we put in a brand new pedestrian counter a year or two ago in a section that's a dead end into a large community park, holiday park in the downtown area. And now we see 30,000 people a year crossing that location into an area that's basically underserved, in an area where you don't see a lot of the traditional users. So that's just one example. Another example of that is quite a while ago, back in 95, 96, the folks from Lowe's, the hardware folks, were looking to build a regional distribution center in the Front Range of Colorado, Wyoming. And they were looking at a number of communities up and down the Front Range. And on a lark, the scout who was out looking for a location said, what if I go to Cheyenne, Wyoming? I've never been to Wyoming. She came up here and she saw exactly that. She saw a number of people out on the trails, having fun, enjoying themselves, kids, adults, biking, walking, having a great time, and said, you know what? This is the kind of community we can invest in. A couple of years later, they came back and built the largest building in the state of Wyoming, employed a couple thousand people, and it's an incredible success story for our community. So yes, people do use the trail. It's seen by companies, and it's a positive feedback mechanism for our community.
So just a nice place to walk or bike is an important part of the quality of life here then.
Absolutely. That's critical to what I do. That's critical to what our community uses in its sales to lure other employers to come to our community as well.
And do any of these greenways go close to schools?
Absolutely. So we completed a plan back in 2010. Both a pedestrian plan and a safe routes to school plan look at the 21 of the schools that are in the urbanized area, elementary schools, junior high schools, and looked at some of the good work that was there as a foundation from the school district from about 20 years ago, and tried to update that in terms of recommended walking routes to schools, and then taking a more robust look at the situation and saying, if we're to make infrastructure improvements, if we're to do programmatic elements, what can we do to improve the situation? With that blueprint that we created 7 years ago, we've been able to implement a number of programs. We've been able to put in a number of connections to schools, and I think we've seen our numbers go up in terms of those who are actually walking and biking to school.
And when you start talking about, safe routes to school, who has to be involved in that?
Yeah, it takes a whole community. So obviously school district folks, parents, children themselves, city and county wonks like myself, but everybody gets a voice in this, and that's what a planning process is all about, making sure that the community has an opportunity to provide input in a meaningful fashion, and then what comes out on the other end, the plan actually reflects what they're looking for, that it reflects their concerns in terms of safety, reflects their concerns in terms of access to trails, and reflects their concerns in terms of reasonable timing. We can put in a beautiful trail, but if it's not direct, if it's too far away from the school, it's just not going to get used as much. So we took that information back when we were preparing that original plan, and then as we've been going through and doing the implementation projects to heart in order to get the most effective facility out there.
And you do a lot of stuff in the metropolitan area here. Do you ever talk with the people in at the state level?
Yeah. So in fact, I've been honored to be part of the bicycle pedestrian task force for the state. A couple of years ago, there was a spike in the number of bicycle fatalities, And some legislators came back and said, you know, we ought to be thinking a little bit more systematically about what we do as a state in order to make a reasonable place for people to bicycle and walk in our state. And what can we do as we look forward to make it a more inviting place for people to come and live? There was a former governor who described Wyoming as a small community with really long roads, or something to that effect. And that's really true, even though we're very large geographically, only a density of 1 person per square mile. Most of those people, ironically, live in a mere 0.2% of the landmass of the state. And so we do have the opportunity to make a meaningful impact in bicycling and walking within those urbanized areas, and then connecting them up with long-distance trails, whether that's for biking or for walking. So I've been asked to participate in this task force, and we're now going to be preparing a report and giving that back to the legislature within the next couple months here. And it's going to have a number of recommendations for all the state agencies, what they can do to improve health outcomes, Department of Health, same thing for state parks, DOT, et cetera, down the line. And then also recommendations for local municipal entities such as the city of Cheyenne.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.